You know what? I didn't do the countdown.
Yeah. I
Up.
was wondering where the countdown was.
Well, too late now.
Why?
We're certainly not counting anything down in this moment. Hello. Pretend there was a countdown. 10, 9, 8. Hi, everybody out there, and those watching later, and everyone. Before we talk about our topic today, just want to take a moment to remind everybody to please like, follow, subscribe, and join in the conversation too. We want to hear from you if you're watching this. We would absolutely love to hear from you. And that is all for me right now. Who wants to introduce the topic?
Lisa.
Don't volunteer at once.
Life coaching ethically. How exciting does that sound? Ethics. Can we handle ourselves through these ethical conversations?
I think I just fell asleep.
More specifically as well, the ICF's insights and considerations for
Oh,
ethics.
listen how fancy he just got.
ICE.
ICE, I know they're
I don't know why did they do that. How did not somebody tell them ICE is not really a good thing?
vanilla ice.
But before we get into the conversation, be sure to like, subscribe, share,
I said that.
comment. Oh, and participate?
Were you not here for that? Where were you?
Did you say
Where-
participate?
I did.
Oh my
fell
God.
He
Wait,
fell
I
asleep
don't-
during the whole ethics thing. It just dozed off.
I thought we just completely skipped over. It's the countdown messed me up.
Why do we find ethics to be so boring?
Because these aren't like ethical dilemmas like the trolley problem or like they're not brain teasers. It's just like, okay, what you can and can't do as an ICF coach. Nobody likes rules.
And basically, at the core of it, it's like pretty straightforward. Just do the right, like make it a Spike Lee movie and just do the right thing. That's all that needs to be said.
Well, what would be fun though is to think about like mental exercises on like each, standard and how a coach could mess that up. How they could
I
really
kind of
just
want to play with that.
F it up. Or
You read my mind, Anthony. You read
instances where a coach
Well,
can just
there's
totally drop the
28. We
ball.
better get going then.
We'll do with number 1 then, and then we'll just let the conversation
Also,
go.
though, really quick, let's talk about that. We threw out the name ICE, and we did that with utilizing the curse of knowledge to the best of our ability.
Mm-hmm.
Why? What do we mean? What does that even? What are we talking about when we say ICE?
Insights and considerations for ethics. Isn't that self-explanatory?
I know. I think
No.
we could stand to have a little more explanation there. I think.
So originally there was just a code of ethics, and it was 28 standards that just read very simply as sentences. But ICF decided they need to go more in depth. They need to share their insights and their considerations for each of these sections. So more paragraphs, more explanations. It sort of develops further what they already had. But the standards, I believe, are pretty much the same. Correct me if I'm wrong, Lisa.
Well, who knows? They might change flex a bit.
And the funny thing out of it, like while there's 28 plus all the other information, when it comes time for the ICF evaluators to actually review a call, they boil it down to 7 basic criteria out of the 28.
Although I will say the 7 basic criteria I was like, ooh, this is great until I get to number 4, which is abides by the ICF code of ethics and core values. And I'm like, well, they just threw it back in. I mean, that.
Yeah, they're self-referencing the 28 standards. So
didn't they ever go to like elementary school English class where you learn not to put the word you were defining in the definition of the word?
In the definition, they kind of did that exact thing.
Apology right there.
And
so really, the demonstrate ethical practice is just follow the code of ethics.
But I think that what I really would like to is we'll talk through these ethics really quick. But I think there's a secondary thing that can be really important to discuss in this space. So I will wait to bring that up until after we've talked through the ethics. But I think that is just the first step when we discuss ethics. I think there are other things to consider and talk about in this space. So let's begin, shall we? And we'll try to move through this quickly because there are 28 ethics. What is an ethic, by the way?
It's how you should act, or you are expected to act.
How you're expected to act. It's a
Somebody else's rules of behavior.
there we go. Okay, yeah. It describes the core values, ethical principles, and standards of behavior for ICF coaches, essentially. So, introduction. The big introduction sort of goes through a whole thing about we don't need to read this whole thing. Should we?
How about this? Why should even coaches act ethically? How about that? What's stopping me from just being unethical? And
I ask myself
screwing
that
over
every
clients?
day.
Well, if you're an
Everybody
unethical
knows.
coach,
Jen,
You will
yeah.
If you're an unethical coach, you will get reported to the ICF.
Okay. What if I'm not even with the ICF? What if I just call myself a coach and decide to act unethically?
Then you're not breaking any code of ethics other than your own because you're not aligned to the ICF.
Mind you could be breaking the law.
You could be breaking the law. Breaking the
Good.
law. Breaking the law.
You could be breaking the law, and some of the ethics is a good guideline to sort of help distinguish like what you can and can't do with the title of the coach.
I'm just gonna say it's
can't
almost
practice
like
psychotherapy.
best practices situation. We're like,
Mhm.
hey guys, we say use your common sense, but for not everybody on this planet is their common sense is the same, right? So ICF is sort of just let's put the common sense down on paper so that hopefully it's real straightforward for everybody. And they do it both with the ethics and also I would say even with the core competencies as well. But let's start with section 1, which would be defined as responsibility to clients. So that's the other thing we have to understand as coaches, we're working with another human being. And I think that by virtue of realizing this is not an autonomous process, this is a process that involves other people, you have to have an ethics there because you can be doing harm. And we don't, I think as coaches, we want to prevent that possibility of harm doing. And ICF, I think even their way that coaching has evolved and been created and then by creating the credentialing and the certification process is really taking steps towards this sort of first do no harm kind of.
Well, even they go beyond that. In the later standards, one of them really explicitly says doing good rather than not doing harm. That's what the ethics are for, is to be actively putting good into the world rather than just avoiding harming someone, which is also important, by the way.
And I think that's important. And so why is that important? Because if we're doing therapy, we could very well be doing harm, right? Because we're doing something we're not licensed to, and that's why all of these guidelines, I think, and rules are so critical. And even though we laugh at them and we think it's common sense, they really do serve a greater purpose. So let's breeze through these. 1, explain and ensure that prior to or at the initial meeting, my coaching clients and sponsors understand the nature and potential value of coaching, the nature and limits of confidentiality, financial arrangements, and any other terms of the coaching agreement. So I am going to tell you what coaching is and is not. I'm going to tell you the extent to which I'll be able to hold confidentiality, and I will go over that contract.
Mhm.
Hashtag creating transparency.
Yeah, it's being straightforward. This is what it is. This is what it isn't. Boom.
Now, how do some people get this wrong?
A lot of people do.
Well, the easy one on the surface would be in a client and sponsor relationship when, and by definition, the sponsor is someone paying for the service, not receiving the service. That could either be the two ways it might show up, or either coaching teens because the teen can't legally sign the contract and probably doesn't have the money to, so their parent would be the sponsor, or in corporate, the company would be the sponsor paying for the service with the employee. That if we have our confidentiality is with the client, but there may be things that need to be shared back to the sponsor, depending on what the role is. But knowing what the boundaries are of what gets shared and what isn't, because let's say the the employee has some really heavy stuff going on at home that they don't want in the workplace. They're trying to maintain some boundaries around that. And if they share that with us in a session and we go running back to their boss, who's the sponsor, and say, hey, you know why? Here's why this person isn't showing up, because they got there's some really heavy stuff going on at home. And now we're a gossip. We've broken confidentiality with the client. We may have even further injured their role at work and also injured their relationship with us. Yeah.
So much harm done in that situation. I think too, a lot of folks might get this wrong by not having a contract, not taking that extra step to do that, not taking that extra step to go through the contract and have, I still get that question all the time. Do we need that? Do we need a contract as a coach from our students? And my response is every single time is yes. Yes, yes, yes. And I would say that one, this really says that you need a contract. And not only that, you need to discuss it with your client and make sure they understand it.
Well, and it keeps things clear, simple, and a discussion point if things aren't understand. If the client doesn't understand what the agreement is, you're going to discuss it. You've got points to highlight in that contract.
Now,
so
they highlight a couple things in this, and I know we're trying to go through quickly, but it says the potential value of coaching. What is so? Why do we have an ethical responsibility to share the potential value of coaching?
My gut goes to the word. Oh, go ahead, Anthony.
Oh, I was going to say the key word is potential value, because there's no real absolute value in coaching in terms of ROI. You can't promise the world to your clients because it's ultimately dependent on the client to achieve the results they're looking for. So there only exists a potential value for one. You can't be saying, hey, if you work with me, you're going to be a millionaire in 3 months. Be sure to pay me
guaranteed
$60,000, guaranteed. Things like that. That's an absolute value, and you cannot ever guarantee that, as far as I know.
Yeah, exactly where I was going to go with it. The key word was potential.
The other thing it outlines here is financial arrangements. So why is it important for us to make sure prior to the meeting that my clients understand financial arrangements?
Where I go to with that one might be the first one that comes to mind is referral sources, particularly if we're referring to, let's say, a therapist. Something comes up that's outside of our scope of practice that we then say, this is outside of my scope of practice. I'd like to refer you to someone to help you with that. And if we get a referral fee from that practitioner, Code of Ethics says we need to disclose that to the person, the client to whom we are referring.
I would absolutely say it's also law, really, that if we're getting kickbacks, we need to put that somewhere.
It used to be, I remember a long time ago that we were not allowed to get any kind of referral fee. So that's a newer piece.
Well, and that they just, I mean, and I'm not 100% sure. I also think it's important to discuss financial arrangements, meaning the other place I go is this is what I charge. This is when I expect to be paid. This is what happens when I am not, when this, if payment is not received, this is how it's handled. If you cancel, this is how it's handled. And just sort of having those things that might incur additional cost and being transparent about anything regarding costs.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's important, especially in the contract. Hidden fees, we all need them, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go to 2. Create an agreement and contract regarding the roles, responsibilities, and rights of all parties involved with my client's sponsors prior to the commencement of services. So is that just our agreement again? Is that what that is?
It seems kind of like what the standard one was, but now in writing. And the agreement and the contract. When people ask, is it necessary? It's not only recommended, now it is necessary by standard 2.
Number 3, maintain the strictest levels of confidentiality with all parties as agreed upon. I am aware of and agree to comply with all applicable laws that pertain to personal data and communication.
Which means keeping everything private, safe, locked, under lock and key. Don't share. Under judicial laws, if you are compelled by the judge to turn over said files, then you have to turn them over. We don't have that capability of confidentiality, eliminating them. Ooh.
And also, I think it says as agreed upon. So you make sure and share. We will often say, we're going to record this and we're going to submit this session to ICF if you're okay with that. Not only we check in with our clients when we do that prior to. And so there are moments when confidentiality can be broken, but it's always shared and discussed prior to.
Yeah.
And in that case of like a sample session, because there's some nuance that goes into that, if the agreement is in place that it will be recorded to be shared, then it's not so much that confidentiality is broken, it's that there's an agreement that there's a flexibility in confidentiality for this particular situation.
Yeah, the adapting.
And then again, it says personal data and communications and laws compliable, PCI compliance. Check it out if you haven't already. Make sure that you have your client data in a private place. They are passing big laws in this space and bills in this space. So just always something to take the extra moment to be aware of.
Yeah, and this might also extend to coaches who find a lot of success. You might have a lot of information on your hands. So making sure that information is stored, safely, and that you're not selling it without other people's awareness. Dan disappeared.
I hope Dan comes back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go to our next one. I think we covered have a clear understanding about how information is exchanged among all parties involved during all coaching interactions. We got some nuance there, right? So have a clear understanding about how information is exchanged among all parties involved during all coaching interactions. So I think this is really big in that team coaching space, that executive coaching space, that space where you're working with sponsors and sponsees, and there is more than one party involved, and so this is have a clear understanding about how information is exchanged among all parties involved during coaching interaction.
Mm-hmm. Also, in terms of what is considered, this is sort of at the bottom of that consideration, a verbal versus a written agreement, because in some places a verbal agreement is binding. So that is something to be aware of depending on who you're coaching.
Any other questions in that space? I hear a kitty.
I did too.
Number 5, have a clear understanding with both clients and sponsors or interested parties about the conditions under which information will not be kept confidential. For example, legal activity, if required by law, pursuant to valid court order, subpoena, imminent or likely risk of danger to self or others, etc. Where I reasonably believe one of the above circumstances is applicable, I may need to inform the appropriate authority. So that is if something is going on, that law is breaking, somebody's life is in danger, harm to myself or others, we are bound by ethical principle and ethics here, and I think human principle to report, right?
It's kind of saying mandated reporter without saying mandated reporter.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Number 6, when coaching as an internal coach, manage conflicts of interest or potential conflicts of interest with my clients and sponsors. Dan touched on this a bit already, through coaching agreements and ongoing dialogue. This should include addressing organizational roles, responsibilities, relationships, records, confidentiality, and other reporting requirements. So we touched on that a bit, right? That is essentially keeping a dialogue and communicating through this. Which I think it's pretty straightforward. We're doing good. Next one, also very straightforward. Maintain, store, and dispose of any records, including electronic files and communications. Again, something we touched on. Yeah.
It's kind of interesting how they create the actual standard, but yet repeat it a few times in this. I think
they repeat, but I think that they do that so that there's no question about interpretation, right? They do a generalized version and then they get specific with it. They get very specific.
Yeah.
Furthermore, I seek to make proper use of emerging and growing technological developments that are being used in coaching services. technology assisted coaching services, and be aware of how various ethical standards may apply to them. Whoa, that got weird quickly. So let's cover that. So I'm keeping track of my files. I get that. All right. I know what I'm doing. Professional interactions in a manner that promotes confidentiality, security, and privacy, and complies with any applicable laws and agreements. Fine. But then furthermore comes along, I seek to make proper use of emerging and growing technological developments that are being used in coaching services. What does that mean?
My mind is telling me AI coaching.
Yeah.
Go on, Dan.
And then I'd have to ethically, based on number one, ethically disclose that I'm using AI coaching rather than it being me sitting in the chair if they can't see me.
Oh, wow.
Well, and I think too, it also might be also growing technological developments that are being used in coaching services. Zoom. I'm going to use Zoom
Mhm.
in a way that is ethical. I'm going to use any kind of point of sale service in a way that is ethical and abide by my ethical standards, even while using those things. Danger's really trying to show his butt to the camera, and I'm sorry if it happens.
It was so close we couldn't tell.
What are you doing? Okay. And next one is 8. Remain alert to indications that there might be a shift in the value received from the coaching relationship. If so, make a change to the relationship or encourage the client sponsor to seek another coach, seek another professional, or use a different resource. What does that mean?
It sounds like one where either the clients, if we're not a good fit for the client and we've reached a point where our work with them would be better suited to another coach to refer because we're no longer providing the same value to them at that point any more than what we were before. That's how I read that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it says as well, they may need to refer the client to other modes of support such as counseling, therapy, legal, tax, medical, nutrition, etc. For expert advice. I think this also extends to like when the coaching relationship is completed and the client has achieved maybe what they were looking to get out, the value of the coaching relationship has now gone down. It might be unethical for the coach to keep trying to push the relationship along just to, have a paycheck.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think I like that it says also encourage to make it. They might be scared to make a change. You guys might have reached your goal. You might have gone as far as you're going to go, but they like to see you every week or 2 weeks. But you can encourage them to take whatever the next natural step is if you feel like that it's taken its course with you and them together. Which brings us right into our next one. Respect all parties' right to terminate the coaching relationship at any point for any reason during the coaching process, subject to the provisions of the agreement.
I like the idea of the coach just saying, no, I'm going to see you next week and we're going to keep coaching.
You will be coached.
No, we're not done yet. No, that would be terrible.
You cannot leave.
Always respect somebody's right to say no.
Also, that means, I guess more specifically, having a clear sort of process on how the coaching relationship ends if it is terminated. Is the client going to get refunded sessions? Do refunds even happen?
And that's why it says subject to the provisions of the agreement. And that's why having that clear agreement, as we discussed, and those kind of things are in there, included in it. Number 10, we're getting there. Am sensitive to the implications of having multiple contracts and relationships with the same client and sponsors at the same time in order to avoid conflicts of interest situations. So
we talked about that last week as well in the example where both myself and Jen and Jerome are all being coached by the same person under the same company, and conflicts of interest come
but
up.
even one step further, let's say I'm coaching Lisa here, right? And I decide to take, and she's the owner of this business, but I decided to take a contract up with one of her employees or there can be start to get muddy, and we can get some weird conflict of interest going on there. Or let's say I have stock in a company or something, and I start to coach. There's like weird conflicts of interest that can happen. Or I am personally somehow invested in the outcomes of the client that I'm working with. So that's why we don't coach family. That's why we don't, right? Because it gets muddy because we can't be a neutral source. So just always keeping that in mind, that also if I have one client that comes to me, but I'm already coaching, let's say I'm coaching a wife, and then her husband comes along and says, I'd like you to coach me too. That can be weird conflict of interest, right? It might be, no, I think it's better you get your own coach so I can hold a safe space for your wife, unless, there's a discussion and everybody's okay on that.
The other one that comes under this one is, let's say somebody who is a counselor therapist who also offers coaching, that if it's a coaching contract, they stay in the lane of the coaching relationship and not branch over into facilitating as a therapist, even though they are fully qualified to do so. Keep the hats clean.
Am aware of and actively manage any power or status difference between the client and me that may be caused by cultural, relational, psychological, or contextual issues.
Yes, so it should feel like a partnership. It should never feel like the coach or the client is above or below. And if you sense that is occurring where one is above or below, you speak up about it. And
how do you actively manage any power or status difference?
I think we're talking about attitude and behavior. I don't think we're actually talking about, I drive a Toyota Camry and you drive a Lamborghini. I don't think that's how they're referring to the status equation. It's if I act, what's the word, snobbish, and feel like I have the right answers and I am the authority over you. That's, I believe, my takeaway on what they're sharing there.
There might be. Oh, yeah. I was going to say there also might be the fact of acknowledging that there is a status difference of power. Because I'm going to use the most extreme example I could think of is, what if Elon Musk or Donald Trump decided to coach somebody who was homeless on the street and this was their life? Like, there's some and they were coaching them on wealth accumulation, wealth management. If that goes unacknowledged, or there's some sort of not acknowledgement of the power difference there, that might be a problem in the coaching relationship, because there's a very obvious status difference between them socioeconomically, but that's a very obvious example. It's a lot subtler in real life.
And the funny thing on that one is, I got to observe something very similar to that. While it wasn't those two individuals, somebody who is a coach who earns a very, very, very high dollar per hour meeting a homeless person and treated that person like an absolute equal, that the exterior validation, the exterior quantification of the money had nothing to do with it at all, met him as a total equal human being in front of him. And that's might be that power dynamic as well, that we don't put our externals forward as we're better in any way, but just meeting another human being as a human being.
So it's more about the energetics of the coach-client relationship.
Because they might even, since we have initials after our name, they might see us as a bit of an authority, even though we know they're the authority in the room in their life and they're autonomous.
This also might come into play when it's like there is a hierarchy between the coach and the client, such as, I'm an executive at a company and I'm coaching my junior level staff. That's both maybe a conflict of interest and a difference in status as well, or maybe the client doesn't feel safe opening up completely.
I would also say it's also bringing an awareness around the knowing that what you brought up is that when we even with praise, I think that the giving praise to our clients sort of comes up in this space a bit, because if we are telling our clients you did a good job or I'm proud of you,
Yeah.
we are putting ourselves in a position where they are looking to us for that, and it's sort of a position of authority, and we might already have that position of authority, so now we're reinforcing it with praise, and so this sort of comes up in that space as well.
Mhm.
And that becomes an interesting counterpoint to core competency 8 when we're looking at facilitating clients' growth and kind of opening them up to recognizing how far they've come before we ever say, look at how far you've come.
Mhm.
Let them own it first before we do any validation.
Mhm.
Number 12. Disclose to my clients the potential receipt of compensation and other benefits I may receive to referring clients of third parties. So we talked about that. We've covered it. I don't think we need to go any deeper there.
If I'm making my money off of a client in some other way, then I should disclose it to them.
Or if I'm telling all of my clients, hey, guys, you should really use this tool. It will change your life. And I'm getting a kickback every time somebody downloads that app. I better tell my clients that I'm getting a kickback, because it might be I'm recommending it because I'm making money and not because it's as great of a tool as it is. So 13, assure consistent quality of coaching regardless of the amount or form of agreed compensation in any relationship.
So, staff student coaching program? Crap. We do the worst coaching because it's for free.
So tell me, do you want the $10 coaching or do you want the $1,000 coaching?
Yeah.
Oh, you only paid for the $10 coaching. Okay.
And we'll
Right.
have a little session and we'll chit chat for 10 minutes. Charging
But we're
$1.
gonna, no matter if we've accepted a client on, if it's for whatever amount you have agreed upon, for whether it be $0 or $1 million, you're going to come to the table, come to the room, come to that coaching space, the same coach in both situations.
Yep.
It might be a crap coach in both situations, but at least be fair.
Also, I guess practically to the coaches out there, you don't have to coach for less than you're worth. No one's forcing you to coach for, $0. You can just choose to not accept a coaching relationship if it doesn't.
Yeah.
I wasn't inferring anybody is worth that. I was just making a joke.
Yeah.
Section 2, we've made it to section 2, responsibility to practice and performance. As an ICF professional, 14, adhere to the ICF code of ethics in all of my interactions. When I become aware of a possible breach of the code by myself, or I recognize unethical behavior in another ICF professional, I respectfully raise the matter with those involved. If this does not resolve the matter, I refer to a formal authority, for example, ICF Global, for the resolution. I'm turning myself in. I raised it up with myself and it did not work. I have to turn myself in.
This sounds like a job for the coaching police.
Right. However, that was sort of something I wanted to bring up, and we can touch on it here. This is something that comes up. We will occasionally get emails from people who are attempting to report something to us. And our response is to direct them in the way of ICF, because ICF has they have people who review this. They have people that are specifically equipped to review these issues, to go over these issues, do so in an ethical and fair way. And that utilize that space. It is theirs to you. And so we do refer folks to those spaces and know that there is a way to report if ever the issue comes up. Yes, I think that's enough of that. 15, require adherence to the ICF code of ethics by support personnel.
So everybody who works with you
also might be part of the reason why all of our staff take our classes and agree to our ethics and agree to these standards, because everybody involved has to abide by the same code of ethics.
This also
Everybody-
this is kind of interesting. I'm reading this. It extends to people we work with, employ, or associated with, who could from time to time have access to clients and their information.
Bing,
And
bing,
this
bing.
could be virtual assistants or like translation devices as well.
Mhm.
So, if they're handling client information, they have to act.
They have to be respecting confidentiality, respecting privacy laws, respecting and making sure. And it's our ethical responsibility to make sure that those people we don't get out of it because we didn't know, right?
Yeah.
Because if we've hired them and trusted them with our client information, we are expected to ensure that their safety and confidentiality extends the moment we hand it to any other human being, right?
Don't give your client information to Equifax.
I sell it on remarketing lists.
Yeah.
Based on what their interests are.
But be sure to tell them that you get a referral fee for it when you do so.
Sure. Yeah. Do not do these things. Okay, number 16, commit to excellence through continued personal, professional, and ethical development.
Keep
Sounds
learning.
more of like a guideline than an ethic. Like, hey, this would be nice if you could do this.
Commit to excellence.
Except that part of ongoing ICF membership is 40 hours of Con Ed every 3 years. So that's
Mhm.
the ethical side of it, of the growth.
I gotta get on I gotta take some classes.
But it's also ethical to not stay stuck in your ways, because we all know very recently the core competencies have changed and the ethics have been updated. So if you're still stuck with 2005 competencies and ethics, ICF, you're not doing your due diligence. There's a melon cat on my shoulder.
Number 17, recognize my personal limitations or circumstances that may impair, conflict with, or interfere with my coaching performance or professional coaching relationships. I will reach out for support to determine the action to be taken and, if necessary, promptly seek relevant professional guidance. This may include suspending or terminating my coaching relationship. What does that mean?
I would say,
Go ahead, Lisa, and then I'll throw in.
nope, go ahead.
I think this one goes a lot of different directions, down to what we've already talked about with boundaries and knowing what's outside of our scope of practice. I had something that I think would fit into this 2 weeks ago when I was feeling really, really sick, and my awareness and my presence was getting further and further down as the afternoon went on. And I reached out to my client for that evening and said, I do not think I'd be a good thought partner for you tonight. Is it okay if we reschedule? If you need me to rally, I'll rally to the best of my ability. But really, if we can push off to next week, I think I could be of service to you better. Because I knew I wasn't in a good space to be able to coach that night.
Let's say I'm a coach and I have had a trauma in my past or something. The client I'm working with triggers that to some degree, and it comes up, and I find that it keeps coming up. It would be up to me to go seek professional help elsewhere to ensure that I can still coach and maintain my presence when those triggers come up, when those things happen, and I'm handling it outside of the session with them so that I can be present. And if I find it's too much and I cannot, then I say, okay, we might have to terminate this.
Yeah.
And having that team to be able to go to is going to be important, to have a debrief, not about the session, but about what's impacting you and how you should unpack that. Sometimes simply a mentor or a supervisor can help with that process as well.
I have my support group. Looking at them, right? So there's more, but there definitely, I have one of the best support groups ever. It's fantastic.
We have the same one. Imagine
we had
that.
We had a little session before we came on today. Okay. 18. Wait, did I read that? No, here we are. Yes. Resolve any conflict of interest or potential conflict of interest by working through the issue with relevant parties, seeking professional assistance, or suspending temporarily or ending the professional relationship. That's, I think, straightforward. I don't think there's questions there. Maintain the privacy of ICF members and use the ICF member contact information, email addresses, telephone numbers, and so on, only is authorized by ICF or the ICF member.
And I wonder why I get so many emails from non-authorized people. I mean, outside.
Well, I think they can pull if they have access to an ICF and you're listed. Because I've gotten those where I
Yeah.
you can always tell that it's not, and I get annoyed with them. But may not be the fault of. But what they're saying though is if I have Dan's cell phone number and I've got somebody that wants to get in touch with Dan. Maybe this person, I don't realize that they're a little cuckoo. And I give Dan cell phone number to that person might start blowing up Dan's phone. And that might not be how Dan wants to be reached. Dan probably wants to be reached in whatever professional contact information he has shared through ICF.
Give him his address, home address.
Right? That's another one, though. People often don't realize, and it can be a very innocuous thing. I know Jen has been offered for folks to send her gifts and things. And as a company, we say, Jen, you do not give out your home address to anybody that you meet, or we do not do that. No. Like, that's not okay. So we respect that. That's respecting the privacy of other ICF members, even if we have inside information, right? Yeah. Okay, guys, we made it to 20. 8 more to go. Section 3, responsibility of professionalism, which is as an ICF professional, I identify accurately my coaching qualifications, my level of coaching competency, expertise, experience, training, certifications, and ICF credentials.
I know what this means.
What does it mean, Jen?
It means if you are certified, not credentialed, that you don't say I'm an ICF certified coach, because that's not a thing. You are a certified coach through ICF accredited training. You don't misrepresent yourself, because if you say I'm an ICF certified coach, people will believe that you are credentialed. They just interpret it that way, and that is very misleading.
This also doesn't mean like, hey, don't lie or don't mislead. It also means that you can't omit this information. It's telling you to identify your coaching qualifications if you are saying you're a coach. So if I'm going to make a website, I should put on my website what level I'm accredited or credentialed.
Not should. You're going to do it. If you're going to abide by the ethical standards, it will say, this is my training. We're required to disclose it. Number 21. Make verbal and written statements that are true and accurate about what I offer as an ICF professional. What is offered by ICF, the coaching profession, and the potential value of coaching.
So do your due diligence when you're marketing. We do that in our blog writing as well. We make sure when we write our blogs, we are accurate and we are citing our information with what the ICF defines as coaching and what we offer and, what we aren't as well.
Also,
it's maintaining due diligence.
It's that what is coaching and what isn't. We're not offering therapy. We're not offering a consultant. We are coaches. This is what coaching does. This is the outcomes and true values. We're not running out there saying, you're going to make 6 figures in 3 days by following my plan and blah, blah, blah. That would be sort of not what a real ICF professional would do. Is make those giant promises and things of that nature.
And then that falls back under being clear on the boundaries of the potential benefits of coaching instead of making absolutes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Number 22, communicate and create awareness with those who need to be informed of the ethical responsibilities established by this code.
So clients and sponsors.
And fellow employees.
And fellow employees and all of those people. Yeah, exactly. And we're going to just communicate and talk to them. 23, hold responsibility for being aware of and setting clear and appropriate culturally sensitive boundaries that govern interactions, physical or otherwise. What does that mean?
# don't discriminate and be aware of context of culture.
I'm thinking of a lot of humorous, inappropriate examples right now that I would like to give.
So am I.
To do. I'm going to refrain from that, but it's probably sexist or racist settings or cultural experiences.
It can
things
be
like
subtle
that.
too, though. Remember, take that moment to. I think it would be fair to take a moment to be culturally aware, and be fair. So this morning there was a fire inspection, and we have women who work out in our studio that wear head coverings, and more specifically, cannot take them off when men are present. So. But we knew enough to check in with them and say, hey, not sure when these fire department might come through. What in this situation would be most comfortable for you? How do you want us to handle it? And we just had that conversation with them, knowing that, right? So in the place that I work out. So I think it can be subtle too. It doesn't always have to be offensive. It can be being capable of knowing enough to communicate, when breaches might happen, or when we're being respectful of other people, their beliefs, their culture, and who they are.
Further into the consideration.
I think this extends to taking the time to educate ourselves in that space and ask questions if we feel like there is something we need to know in that space too.
And I think it's also important here to recognize we can have awareness around something potentially being there, and we can do whatever we can to learn into it and be ready. We can't know everything all the time. And sometimes we might just say or do something without the intention of being ignorant in that way of the word. And if that were to happen, receive the feedback and apologize for it, and then know to do better the next time. There could be things that we just don't know about in the true sense of the word ignorance of, I've never been exposed to it before, not the other side of ignorance of, I've know about it, but I'm going to do it to just tweak and push your button anyway.
Yes.
I call that naive. It's just that naivete, you don't know enough to know, even to ask. That naivete is different to me than ignorance. And then follow up.
Number 24. Do not participate in any sexual or romantic engagement with clients or sponsors.
That's why I became a coach, though.
I will be ever mindful of the level of intimacy appropriate for the relationship. I take the appropriate action to address the issue or cancel the coaching engagement.
Yes.
This can also be when a client is attracted to you, though. And it can be something that you might be maintaining those boundaries on your end, but they simply are not.
The client too this might be the first person that they feel really heard and seen by.
With. Yes. So it can cause, and so just have an awareness and also know what your boundaries are and set those boundaries before you get into these situations and have those discussions, even if they're uncomfortable.
Would it be appropriate at the beginning of a coaching session to be like, whoa, I'm married. Just FYI.
Just start out day one. Just so you know, I'm married here. I just, in the past, things that's hilarious.
I know I'm a handsome guy, but just watch out.
Just stay put. This is just coaching.
I think I'm going to ask for a refund on my cuddle coaching certificate now.
Okay, we're in our last section, responsibility to society. We have a responsibility to society as coaches. Who knew? As an ICF professional, I avoid discrimination by maintaining fairness and equality in all activities and operations, while respecting local rules and cultural practices. This includes, but not limited to, discrimination on the basis of age, race, gender expression, ethnicity, sexual orientation, religion, national origin, disability, or military status.
That's an interesting one. And I'm going to say why it's interesting, because what if it is my religious tradition to discriminate based on sexual orientation?
Kind of.
Well, also, what if I just feel that I'm not the right coach for this person based on one of those qualities? I don't know. This is an interesting one.
So this is what it says in the insights and considerations. An ICF professional may turn down offering service to a client for personal reasons such as value conflicts. However, these reasons should not be based on local legal definitions of discrimination. This standard also calls on the ICF professional to consciously ensure that this code will be followed unless it is superseded by local law or statute or organizational policy. And you need to know your professional laws in regards to what is considered discrimination or not. Just because I don't like somebody's sexual orientation is probably not a good enough reason, or ethnicity or race. Your personal distaste does not really fall under that sort of.
I would hope that person would not find their way to you if you had those discriminations. I would hope that they would not have to suffer through that, and that would suck. And I think that anybody who is really truly committed to being an open and accessible coach that is neutral and really holds these values true will do everything in their power to abide by this. I really genuinely do. And I think that it's there because it needs to be there. So it needs to be said, but I would really, really hope that anybody who is in this space wouldn't outright discriminate. I would really hope, because that's really, for me, an antithesis of what we are as coaches. We're supposed to be neutral and welcoming and create a safe space. And discrimination for me is the total antithesis of creating a safe space.
So what's the line between discrimination and genuinely feeling like you are not the best coach to serve this client?
Beyond my scope of practice, about me.
That's based on values. That's based on not things. So when we're talking values, when we're talking about what we feel we are qualified for, when we're talking about, that's a value. That's not a human characteristic that is out of somebody's control, right? That's not if that is not in that space of discrimination, right?
So the distinction would be, it's outside of the scope of my practice, not I don't want to work with you because you fit this criteria that I disagree with.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
On to the next one.
Number 26. Recognize and honor the contributions and intellectual property of others. Ooh, sorry. Only claiming ownership of my own material. I understand that a breach of the standard may subject me to legal remedy by a third party. Sorry, we may have had that ethic broken by in the past, and that might be why we get a little icky.
We didn't break the ethic.
No, not us.
Don't steal stuff.
Don't steal stuff. Don't plagiarize. Don't pretend that things are yours that are not yours. Give credit to the folks who have come before you. Give them the credit that is due. It does not mean you cannot build upon the work of others and create your own thought processes and do your own thing and make things your own and add to it. We can add to it, but we don't outright
Steal.
Yeah.
And just put a new title on it.
That's just and DMCA all day. There we go. Okay. Number 27. Am honest and work within recognized scientific standards, applicable subject guidelines, and boundaries of my competence when conducting and reporting research. That's an interesting one.
That's a spicy one.
Yeah. Am honest and work within recognized scientific standards. That is almost like holding your to coaches to a standard that I am not sure every coach is educated to withhold.
Really?
Well,
that
maybe not.
Yeah.
Because what I'm hearing in that one is that if you're doing research, go into it with a hypothesis. Your hypothesis could be wrong. Instead of going into it with a hypothesis, I'm going to find everything I can to prove myself right. So scientific method would be, I have an idea, let's experiment and see if the results validate my hypothesis or not.
Well, and it's also recognizing the boundaries of your competence. That's a big thing. So knowing which that's why I said it's almost asking people to know what they don't know. Like maybe, you know what I mean? Because a lot of times we might believe something to be true and might not. So it's a humble moment. Like this is like a be humble. And also if you're reporting research, conducting research, doing things of that nature, make sure that you are doing so. Honestly, I would say outsource it. Truthfully,
Get a researcher or a scientist to...
Yes, please hire somebody.
And if they make sure they follow the code of ethics.
Yes, and make sure they exactly. All right, last one, guys. Am aware of my and my clients' impact on society. I adhere to the philosophy of doing good versus avoiding bad.
So this cuts into my idea of coaching like criminals, like organized criminal organizations. Even though I'm following all the rest of the code of ethics, I can't do that because it ultimately harms society.
Well, and also we're bound to report if a law is being broken.
I guess I don't need to know that. This one is a bit odd, in my opinion.
I have mixed emotions, but that's just because for me the words good and bad carry a lot of baggage.
Yeah. What my idea of doing good is probably different than Jen's idea of doing good.
And also we may not know. Like there is so much there are just some things we do not know. So it's hard. But I guess it's saying am aware. So
and how was it worded? Doing good versus avoiding bad? Is that how it was worded?
Yeah, doing good versus avoiding bad.
There's also intentionality in that of movement forward versus I'm just going to skirt around this and ignore it.
Right? Yes. Well, and I think that ultimately we can nitpick it apart, but we all ultimately know what that means, and that means that we are taking steps and we're aware of both my and my clients' impact on society, realizing that we are not autonomous beings. We have an impact that is greater than us, and it is a societal impact, and we are setting out to do good, to make the world a better place, rather than, and this is a big one, avoiding bad. So that's that. It's not just not doing harm, it's that we're trying to do good, we're trying to make things better, not just avoiding harm. It's taking it one step further. It's raising the bar one step higher.
So rather than the guidelines and the ethics being like sort of guardrails to keep you just going off track, you're affirming and asserting those code of ethics as a force of good for coaching in the world, and it will have a positive impact rather than hopefully nothing bad.
We have made it through the ethics. We are out of time.
Wow, that was quick.
Normally, I would say to all of you out there watching, make sure you like, share, comment, and still, please subscribe, do all of those things. But hi to all of our students who will be forced to watch this at some point. Hello. I just want to say hi to you guys because I'm certain at some point we'll say you guys need to watch this. And I just want to say hi, CLCI students. Because I think that these ethics are very important, and they're something that is signed by our students, every one of them, and they are expected to adhere to them. And so I think this discussion would be very helpful for them to see. And that is why I said hello to our students. Final thoughts quickly.
So if we set up a referral fee for any time I refer a student or a mentoring client to share this, do I have to disclose that referral fee?
Yes. But it has to at least be on your website somewhere.
Okay.
At a minimum.
The next time in the office when I don't know something and I ask a question, I'm going to say that it's a boundary of my competence. Sorry, guys, that's just a boundary of my competence.
I'll say to our viewers, make the ethical choice and take our classes at Certified Life Coach Institute. It's the only ethical choice you could make. Lisa, Brooke?
While these ethics seem pretty simple to learn and wear, follow them. Just follow them. It's going to keep your perspective of who you are, what you're doing, what you're not supposed to be doing, much more in alignment with the process that we're training. We're training you in 3 days, times 2.
All right, I'm gonna head. Okay, I already gave mine before we did all of this. Hi, Dan. It's awesome having you here. I'm excited that you're going to be
Yay!
here like the rest of
It's
the
the magic.
Oh,
Oh, the cats
Thank
see
you guys
that.
out there so much for watching. And Dan, you're gonna have to take our picture, by the way. Bye everybody. Good to see you.
bye.
Yeah.